You know how everyone's always trying to crack the code to wealth building?
He's like this elusive thing.
Yeah. Well, we've got a deep dive today that might just hold the key.
Oh, this is juicy.
We're diving into this super insightful interview with Scott Galloway,
Okay.
entrepreneur, investor, NYU professor,
I know Galloway.
and someone who's been rich 3 times over.
3 times.
And yeah, he's lost it all twice.
Wow.
Which honestly makes his advice even more interesting, right?
Absolutely. That real world experience. You know, he's been in the trenches.
Exactly. And he doesn't shy away from like the tougher topics.
Oh, like what?
Well, like he flat out says that privilege plays a role in success.
Mm-hmm.
He even calls being born a white male in 1960s California his smartest move.
Right. The accidental advantages.
But, and this is crucial, he doesn't dwell on it.
Okay, good. Because that can get a little,
Yeah. It's not about guilt-tripping anyone.
Exactly.
It's about acknowledging that reality exists, but then quickly pivoting to, okay, what can you control?
And I think that's what people really want, right? Actionable advice.
Totally. And his own story, it's not like he was handed everything.
Oh,
He talks about his mom being super worried about money all the time.
Single mom, right.
Single mom, yeah. And that really left a mark on him.
Understandably.
He was driven by this deep need for economic security from a young age,
Makes sense.
which makes the story of his first investment even wilder.
Okay, what happened?
Imagine being 13 years old.
13.
13. And your mom's boyfriend hands you $200 and is like, go figure out this thing called the stock market.
What?
I mean, talk about a crash course.
That's insane.
What did he do? So he walks into, and this is hilarious to me, not one of the fancy brokerages.
Oh, no.
No, those intimidated him.
Right.
He ends up at Dean Witter Reynolds.
Yeah.
And this young broker there, a guy named Sierra, kind of takes him under his wing.
Oh, love that.
And get this, he ends up buying 14 shares of Columbia Pictures.
Why Columbia Pictures?
Because of a movie. He'd seen Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
I love that movie.
And he's like, well, they must be making money.
That's amazing.
So random, but it totally illustrates like how a mentor
Right.
and this early exposure.
Even in like the most random ways.
Exactly. It can spark a lifelong interest.
It's true. And for Galloway, it wasn't just about like picking stocks.
Right.
This tied into a much bigger thing for him about taking risks.
Which he's a huge proponent of.
Huge.
Mm-hmm.
Putting yourself out there. He calls it his atheist unlock, which, I don't know, kind of sounds intense.
It does, right.
But it's actually really interesting.
Yeah.
So it's this whole thing, like, once you really embrace that this is it.
This is it.
Like, this life is finite.
It's kind of a mind bender.
It is, but he's like, you become so much less afraid of rejection.
Because who cares?
Yeah. In 100 years, who's going to care?
Exactly.
Like, all those people you're worried about impressing,
Right.
they're not going to be here.
Morbid, but motivating?
It is. And he channels that into like just being bolder.
Yeah. Does he have like examples?
Oh, yeah. Like approaching his wife at a hotel pool when she was with a group of people.
Bold move.
Right. That one risk paid off big time.
Yeah, I guess so. Married with kids.
Yeah. And actually, his oldest son's middle name is Raleigh
Ah.
because that was the name of the hotel where they met.
I love that.
So cute. Taking risks. But he also talks about how like he ran for class president 4 years in a row.
4 years.
And lost every time.
Ouch.
But he still looks back on those experiences like they were so valuable because it taught him how to lose.
Resilience.
Exactly. Like you put yourself out there.
Yeah.
Even if it means like facing rejection.
Because you never know, right?
You never know what doors might open, what you might learn about yourself.
So true. Okay, so we're hearing take risks, be bold, but then he also talks a lot about diversification.
Oh, yeah. That's like his big thing.
Which feels kind of counterintuitive at first.
Right. It's like, hold on. You want me to bet on myself, but also like spread my bets?
Right. But he calls it the Kevlar vest of wealth.
Which I love.
Such a good analogy. And honestly, he speaks from experience. Like, he almost went bankrupt.
Wait, really?
Yeah. When his e-commerce company Red Envelope tanked during the whole, like, 2008 financial crisis.
Oh, wow.
He was a new dad at the time.
Oh, no.
And he had basically put everything into the company.
I can't even imagine.
Talk about stressful.
Right. Yeah, it's a lot of pressure.
So I think that's where that whole diversification thing comes in.
It's about protecting yourself.
From those financial blows.
And the emotional ones, too.
For sure. It's like having that safety net so you can then afford to take bigger risks.
Exactly.
Okay.
So speaking of risks, Galloway has some interesting, maybe even like controversial advice for young people.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Well, he says, If you're serious about building wealth, like really serious, you need to move to a super city.
Interesting. Like New York, Tokyo, London.
Yeah, exactly. He says like 2/3 of all economic growth is going to happen in just 20 cities globally. So if you want to be where the action is,
got it.
Those are the places to be.
Okay, but what about people who aren't like, I don't know, cut out for that super competitive environment?
That's fair.
Like some people thrive in a quieter, slower pace of life.
Right. It's definitely not one-size-fits-all advice, and he acknowledges that.
Okay, yeah.
He's specifically talking to those who are like laser focused on maximizing their earning potential.
Got it. So let's say you are that ambitious person.
Yeah.
You're just starting out. Maybe you're still living in your parents' basement.
Been there.
How do you actually like build wealth even on a small budget?
Well, first of all, ditch the basement. Just kidding. But seriously, even small amounts of money matter,
Really?
especially if you start young.
Okay, so like time is on your side.
Big time. It's all about compound interest.
I've heard that term, but I feel like I don't fully get it.
Okay, so imagine a tiny glass of sand.
Okay.
That's your money if you just like leave it alone.
All right.
Now picture a massive container overflowing with sand.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
That's what that same small amount of money could become over time because of compounding.
So it's like that money is making more money.
Exactly. It's like
Yeah.
magic, but the catch is you got to start early.
Got it. Time is your friend.
Your best friend. And speaking of starting early, Galloway admits he's made some, let's say, interesting choices.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Well, instead of investing his first big bonus, guess what he bought?
I don't know, a house.
Nope, a BMW.
Oh,
Right. But we've all been there.
Totally. It's tempting, that instant gratification.
The thing is, those early investment decisions, even the small ones, they can snowball over time.
For better or worse.
Exactly. And now he's all about making investing more accessible.
How so?
Well, he recommends platforms like public.com that have really low minimums.
So you don't have to be like super rich to get started.
Exactly. And he's a huge fan of ETFs,
ETS.
exchange traded funds,
Okay.
which are basically like prepackaged baskets of stocks.
So it's instant diversification.
Exactly. Which is why he recommends them for beginners.
Makes sense. So we've covered stocks a bit, about risk. What about real estate?
So he does touch on real estate, but he's a bit less bullish on it these days.
Really? I thought that was like the big wealth builder.
It used to be, but he says the barrier to entry is so high right now.
Yeah, houses are so expensive.
Exactly. And you know what? That actually leads to another really interesting part of the interview.
What's that?
Taxes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like he's pulling back the curtain on this whole other world.
Yeah, like a secret club.
Exactly. And he even says point blank,
What's that?
if you are trying to build wealth, you have an obligation to pay as little tax as possible.
Okay, hold on now.
Legally, of course.
Oh, good. I was going to say.
He's not endorsing tax evasion.
Right.
It's more about highlighting like the information asymmetry.
Okay, so like the wealthy are playing a different game.
Exactly. They know the rules. They have the advisors.
And he wants to level the playing field.
Yes. Like knowledge is power.
Okay, so give me some examples.
Okay, so like instead of selling their stocks and paying capital gains tax,
Right.
wealthy people will often borrow against their portfolios.
Interesting. So they still have the money.
Exactly. They're just using their assets differently.
Right.
Right. Or they'll set up trusts to pass wealth down to their kids.
Estate planning.
Exactly. But in a way that minimizes the tax burden.
I'm seeing a theme here.
Right. There's like a whole other playbook. And then there's this thing called state arbitrage.
State arbitrage? What is that?
It sounds complicated, but it's basically just moving your money or your residency to a place with lower taxes.
Oh, I see. So like Bezos moving to Florida.
Exactly. No state income tax in Florida.
You're right. Of course, not everyone can just pick up and move.
Totally. But
Yeah.
it does highlight how location can play a role.
Okay, so we've talked about investing taxes, all the financial stuff, but here's something I wasn't expecting.
What's that?
Galloway thinks the most valuable skill for success today isn't some fancy algorithm or like coding language.
It's not?
Nope, it's storytelling.
Storytelling,
Yeah, which at first I was like, what does that have to do with like building wealth?
right? Seems kind of random.
But then he explains it, and honestly, it makes so much sense.
Okay, I'm intrigued. How does he connect those dots?
Well, he says, in a world where everyone has a microphone.
True, we're all on social media.
Exactly. The people who can capture attention through story, those are the ones who are going to win.
So it's not just about being loud. It's about being compelling.
Exactly. And he actually requires his NYU students
Oh, wow.
to pick a medium, like writing, video, whatever,
Okay.
and become top 1% storytellers.
Prop 1%, that's hardcore.
It is. But he practices what he preaches. Like, he's very self-aware. He knows he's not great on the phone.
Really?
Yeah, he says he's kind of awkward one-on-one.
Huh, interesting.
Which I kind of love.
Yeah, it's humanizing.
Totally.
Yeah.
So he's found his groove with writing, speaking, podcasting.
Playing to his strengths.
Exactly. And it's clearly working.
It is. So he's walked the walk there.
Totally. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today.
We really have, from compound interest to Kevlar vests.
Don't forget state arbitrage.
Oh, yeah, and the atheist unlock.
See, I don't even think I could sum it all up if I tried.
It's a lot to digest.
It is. But I think the biggest takeaway...
The one that really sticks with me.
Yes. It's that wealth building. It's not just about the numbers.
It's about designing a life you love.
Exactly. It's about the relationships, the experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Those things you can't put a price tag on.
And never stop learning.
Yes. Stay curious about the world. And hey, you might even discover a new passion along the way.
Like Scott Galloway in Premier League football.
Exactly. Who knew? Well, that's it for our deep dive into the mind of Scott Galloway.
Hope you enjoyed it.
We've covered a ton today, so if you want to unpack it all even more, be sure to check out the show notes for links to all the resources we talked about, and tell us what resonated with you. Hit us up on social media, use the hashtag #TheDeepDive.
Until next time.
Stay curious.